Hey everybody, welcome back for another video. Today I'm going to talk about all the books I read in August of 2022. Now, I realize how cliche this sounds, but I am having a hard time coming to terms with the fact that August is already over. That month feels like it went by in a literal blink, and also like, where did 2022 go? So this is all surreal to me, but we are now well into September and I just can't believe that August is over. So a little late with this video, but here we are. And guys, August was awesome for me. I had a couple of medium books, misses, but for the most part, it was overall super good. So I did have a little bit of overage from July. If you watched my July video or if you watched my vacation video, you know that I, towards the end of July, read a reread of A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin, which is one of my favorite books of all time. It is definitely my favorite book one ever. And as someone who loves book ones, that's a big deal. So I reread one of my very favorite books, and that's always a great way to start out a brand new month. I had an amazing time with this. It always gets better every time I read it, so I was not at all surprised that I loved it. Once again, this is my first time reading out of this illustrated edition, and while it is amazing, like this is just an awesome edition. The binding is nice, the cover is nice, the illustrations are beautiful, the pages are nice and thick. I appreciate the size of the font. So this is a great book. But I will say that some of the actual images are a little bit spoilery. Like they'll put the image at the beginning of the chapter, and it sometimes kind of spoils what's coming in that chapter. So, I mean, nothing like completely groundbreaking, but a few things that are a little like, if someone's reading this for the first time, they might like to find that out as it happens. So I guess that's a little bit of a warning with this, but overall, these books are amazing. I highly recommend these illustrated editions because they're not too expensive and they're easy to find. So if you want to upgrade your A Song of Ice and Fire books, I do recommend these. Just be a little bit careful with the illustrations if it's your first time through and you don't know anything about the story. Okay, so now I did not put these in order. I don't have my clipboard with me right now. My daughter's using it. So these aren't in any particular order, but I do know that I have all the books I read in August. So we're just going to go with it. This is my least favorite book I read in August. It's called The Nest. It is by Cynthia Sweeney. And it was just okay. Like, honestly, I found this book at a library sale. It was 50 cents. And I did like the cover. I thought it was cute. And I liked that it was small and it just seemed like something non-committal. It sounded like something I could read on vacation. And then after I purchased it, I did have a couple people mention to me that they had read it and enjoyed it. So I was hopeful for it, but I did not really like it. It's about a group of siblings that are set to inherit their trust fund or their inheritance. And it's just kind of the story of their family and like what they have to go through to end up seeing this money. And I just thought the characters were kind of shallow. I thought the story was just kind of vanilla and nothing really good happened. And so overall, it just was a miss for me. But like I said, I had people recommend it to me. So clearly people enjoy this book. It just wasn't necessarily something that I find memorable or like worth recommending. So The Nest was just like okay. Like if I was going to give it a star rating, it would probably be like a 2 or a 2.5. It was just okay. I guess I am kind of going in somewhat of an order because I did kind of stack these up subconsciously in order of like how I enjoyed them. So that might I might be onto something here. Subconsciously, I did kind of rank these in my stack. So next up is I read 2 more Codex Alera books. I read book 3 and book 4. So book 3 is Cursor's Fury and book 4 was Captain's Fury. And if you follow my videos and my wrap-ups and stuff, you know that books 1 and 2 were kind of a miss for me. Like, they definitely were not bad books. They were not the worst fantasy books I've ever read. They weren't anything terrible, but they just didn't feel like anything special to me either. I felt like I've been here, done this before, and I was just waiting for it to get good. Does that make sense? I was kind of considering just DNFing or shelving the series after book 2 because, like I said, they were fine, but you only have so many hours in a day, and honestly, you only have so many months in a life. And so I just wasn't sure if this was a series I wanted to prioritize because, so many books, not enough time. But I was convinced that I should keep going because I had heard consistently that books 1 and 2, on a first read necessarily weren't that great, but it gets good in book 3 and it gets better from there on out. So I was like, I'm going to trust this, this recommendation coming from people. So books 3 and 4 were markedly better. I liked book 3 quite a bit, but it took me honestly until about the halfway point, about 50-60% in. I'm not going to say that like one thing happened that like changed everything or something like that, but about 50-60% in, the plot started to thicken. Some new revelations were brought to light. Some things happened that made it significantly more interesting. And so after book 3, I was like, okay, I see what people are saying. It did get better. And some stuff happened that made books 1 and 2, a little better on reflection. Like once you get the new information, you're like, okay, I kind of see why they did that. I see why those choices made sense. I see why that person was acting that way. So book 3 helped me a lot. And it turns out I actually liked book 4 quite a bit, to the point where now I'm actually really looking forward to continuing with books 5 and 6. So I kind of hate that in some ways because I don't feel like a series you shouldn't have to become completely like coerced and convinced all along the way to keep going. Like, I promise it gets better. I promise it gets better. But I do think it was worth sticking with it so far. Like I said, at the end of book 4, I'm looking forward to continuing the series, and I really want to see how this wraps up. I want to see where this is going because I have an idea that it's going to be like a cool full circle moment. So far I liked book 3. I really liked book 4, and I'm very much so looking forward to 5 and 6. So I don't know that I'm married to the idea of sticking with 2 books a month. Like that's the pace that the read along is going, but I am kind of going at the pace of my library holds and also at the pace of how I want to do it because I don't want this series to turn into a chore, especially since I'm kind of mixed on it. So far I'm going to call it a thumbs up because book 4 did get me back on board. So if you guys have read Codex Alera, please jump into the comments and like give me your feedback and tell me like, am I on track? Or is it one of those things where like this may not be a series for me? Let me know. I'm very interested in what your thoughts on the series are. But like I said, I'm also pretty interested to see how it's going to wrap up. Next up was my reread of The Forgetting Moon. So a bunch of us over on Mike's Discord server are doing a read-along for the 5 Warrior Angel trilogy. The Forgetting Moon is book 1, and we read it all together in August, and oh my gosh, this was a reread for me, but I loved it even more the second time around. And I'm just relieved and thankful because it seems like everyone who read this really liked it. And I'm just like, oh, you can relax now because I feel like for a long time now, I've been one of the few major champions for this series. I think it's totally underrated. I think not enough people are reading it. I think not enough people are talking about it. And I want this to blow up. So The Lonesome Crown, which is book 3, is coming out in November. So we're doing this read along to kind of work our way up to that and amp people up and get as many people on board as possible. Because I think that so many fantasy readers will absolutely love this trilogy. But we have to talk about it in order to blow it up. Like, we have to get people hyped on it. And so rereading this absolutely revived my hype because it is a book that does even better on a reread. It's so complex and there's so many mysteries and different, like religious doctrines and stuff to where you're like, I feel like this is going to play into the truth of this story. But which one is it? Who has the right of it? Which gods are real? What belief system is going to be the one that holds the answers? What's going to be the key to all these mysteries? Oh, it's so well crafted. And on a reread, I'm getting all of this new information, and It is so good. So please read The Forgetting Moon. We are reading The Blackest Heart this month. And so you absolutely have time to catch up. I haven't even started it yet. I think most of us aren't going to be starting The Blackest Heart until about mid-month. September this month. So you have time to read this and catch up. It is a big book. And I know sometimes people hate it when I say this, but it's a huge book, but it reads really fast because the pacing is super quick. There's no fat, there's no dull or slow parts, and it has short chapters. So if you're at all interested in it, this is the absolute perfect time to pick it up because you can read it with us. And the last thing I read to completion in August was the Tawny Man trilogy. I read 3 Robin Hobb books this month. I read Fool's Errand, Golden Fool, and the final one, Fool's Fate. Isn't this one fancy? It's like covered in plastic. So if you're not familiar with the structuring of Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings, it is one large series with several small series within. And that's worked out really well for me because I've been able to take a trilogy and read it, and then take a break in between if I want to, pick up another trilogy, read it, and then take a break in between that. So I liked Farseer quite a bit. You know, wasn't all-time favorite, not going down on the history books, but I did like it quite a bit and found it very intriguing. I liked the writing style. I was very connected to a lot of the characters and was excited to keep going. I loved the next trilogy. The next trilogy is Live Ship Traders, and it's going to be an all-time favorite for me. I think about those books every day. I absolutely loved it. So I was, of course, excited to continue and read the Tawny Man trilogy, which amongst the Robin Hobb fans is just one of everyone's favorites. And it didn't let me down, not even a little bit. So I mentioned before that the characters in Farseer just absolutely captured my heart and are like some of my favorites, and this just picks up not right where it left off timeline wise, but it picks up with a lot of those same characters that we love from Farseer, and it just brought back all of those feels, but it is elevated from Farseer. Like I said, I liked Farseer a lot, but you can tell that Robin Hobb has grown as a writer and as a storyteller in that time between those two trilogies. Live Ship is a part of the Realm of the Elderlings, but it's not part of Fitz's story. This story as a whole is about Fitz, and this series picks up with Fitz and Night Eyes and the Fool and everybody we love from Farseer. So it was just so good to come back home to the Six Duchies, and the story was so good. And I'm telling you, so in the end, Fool's Fate was my favorite because the last half of this book is some of the best fantasy I've ever read. It's definitely the best Realm of the Elderlings I've read yet. So this one is going to be my favorite of the 3, but each book was so good. And like I said, if you're here for character work and you enjoy Robin's prose and you just love this world that she's building, you're going to love this trilogy. But what surprised me and what you have to look forward to when you read this is she's building on what she started in Farseer. Questions that you didn't even know you had, she answers them. Mysteries that you barely even realized were set up, she elaborates on them and makes everything that happened in Farseer so much more interesting and so much more necessary to the big story. Like after you finish this, you're like, I need more. It has an immaculate ending. Like in fact, I kind of wonder if she even thought about continuing when she finished this, because the ending is so beautiful and perfect, but it also sets it up to where you're like, I need more. I need more of this story. I need more of this world. I need to know more of the truth. I need to know more of what they discovered in this. So she does an awesome job of wrapping up a very satisfying story while still setting you up to crave more. So absolute masterpiece with Tawny Man. If you're not catching my vibe here, I very strongly recommend this. But you absolutely must start with Farseer. And that's not a bad thing. Like I said, you're going to love it and just keep going, because I have a feeling that this journey is going to be worth it no matter what the destination. But I also have a feeling that the destination itself is going to be delicious. I've heard nothing but good things about the final trilogy and the final book and the final ending and where this is all headed. I've heard nothing but good things. And so after getting through this one, I have my sights like laser focused on finishing the whole entire Realm of the Elderlings because my experience has been just absolutely good. And then lastly, I started a few books at the very tail end of August that I didn't finish in August. So when I did my September video right here, I talked about finishing these up in September. I started A Clash of Kings, book 2 of A Song of Ice and Fire. Clearly, I'm going to start that one. I am still only about 80% into this, but it's better every time I read it. There's a reason, you guys, that A Song of Ice and Fire is my favorite fantasy series and that Westeros is my favorite fantasy world. I'll never get tired of it, no matter how many times I read these books. They just get better every time. So I was very, very happy to start A Clash of Kings at the end of August. And I also started, kind of on a whim, didn't really plan for this, but I started Cujo by Stephen King at the end of August. I have finished this. I finished this just a few days ago, early on in September. But this is a very underrated Stephen King book. I don't know why people don't talk about this book way more. I don't know if it's because the movie made it seem kind of cheesy to people, or if it just doesn't get the props it deserves as a book because the movie is so well known. But I super liked this. I will say, it is probably the scariest Stephen King book I've ever read. And don't get me wrong, it is scary in a very, very different way. Misery is very scary, but in a different way. What do people mostly consider to be Stephen King's most scary book? Maybe The Shining, maybe Salem's Lot. Those are all scary books, but in a different way. This one, about made me pee my pants a few times. It was so scary. I will say that the audiobook was only so-so on this one. It has a female narrator, which usually isn't a home run for me. And there were some voices she did that just kind of were like nails on a chalkboard. So I ended up doing this one eyes only for most of it. But I was so scared. And it wasn't just the dog. Oh my God. There were times I had to put it down because I was like, it's just a little too intense for me right now. So I think this is underrated. I think it's scary. I think the character work on it was awesome. It is a Castle Rock book. So if you like that nook corner of Maine that Stephen King enjoys so much, this is going to feel right at home for you. So if you're at all on the fence about Cujo, but you want something actually terrifying, this is going to hit the mark for you. I don't think this is going to be a surprise for anybody, but my book of the month was hands down Fool's Fate. And that's saying something because I would love to make The Forgetting Moon my book of the month, but I'm gonna put it aside because it is a reread. But just know that it is definitely book of the month candidate material. It was so good. A Clash of Kings, I'm not going to count it because it's a reread and because I didn't finish it in August. But it is such a good book. It gets better every time I read it. A Clash of Kings, don't sleep on it. But it has to be Fool's Fate for me. The beginning of this book, if I'm being honest, was a little slow. There were parts of this book that I thought, you're kind of losing me a little bit. But the back half of it was so stinking good that it made up for any quibbles, complaints, gripes I had about the beginning of it. So the first two, Fool's Errand and Golden Fool, they may have been maybe a little better paced for me. They had really good stories from beginning to end. I really liked those. These are all 5-star books in my opinion, all 3 of them. Definitely the book of the month for me. If you have any reservations about starting Realm of the Elderlings, just don't even worry about it. Just get out of your mind. Pick up the first book and just start. Don't let the fact that it's 17 books scare you, because you only have to do a trilogy at a time. And it's always going to be here, but just don't put it off any longer because everyone needs to know how good this book is. I loved it so much. So please join me in the comments. Let me know all about your month, and thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys later.